Welcome to Season 2 of ACC Stars, Where Are They Now? I'm Erin Summers. I'm a sports broadcaster that's covered the Atlantic Coast Conference for a very long time, and I grew up a fan. I've always been curious about what players do after we obsess over them in college. This podcast answers that question. Each week, you'll hear an interview with a former ACC athlete. We'll find out everything they've been doing since playing in college. Thanks for listening. Let's jump in to ACC Stars, Where Are They Now? This week, I'm joined by former North Carolina State point guard Justin Gainey. Gainey helped the Wolfpack to postseason appearances in all 4 years of his college career. And he holds the ACC tournament record for steals. Since playing, he's turned coach. Here's our conversation. First of all, Coach Gainey, I just want to see how you're doing today.
All is well on this end. This is the first time back out on the road in I think it was 13, 14 months. So kind of getting my recruiting legs back up under me. And we got a couple weekends in the books and now it's feeling like old times. So, things are good. We're on the road. We're back working out with our guys and I'm back into our regular routine. So it's all is good.
So where are you calling in from right now?
Right now, I'm in Knoxville, Tennessee, calling in from my office there. So we just got out of workouts, practice, whatever you want to call it, so I'm here.
This is your first season now with Tennessee. I know last year was very different for lots of reasons, but kind of getting your feet wet there at a new school. How has that process been so far?
It's been really good. It's been really good. I've had the opportunity to, be at a lot of different places and I've moved quite a bit in the last 4 years. And so each move presents different challenges, but they also bring new opportunity. And, this move here gives me a great opportunity to be at a very special place with one of the best college coaches in the country. And then it also kind of brings me back to my roots in that Southeast region of the country as well. So I'm excited. My family's excited and just looking forward to a great season here in Tennessee.
You talked about your roots. What was it at the very beginning that got you into the game of basketball?
Man, it was my dad. It was my dad. I'll be honest. He was a huge Lakers fan, a huge Magic Johnson fan. And that was kind of his energy and his enthusiasm about the game is what kind of brought me closer to it. And because, as you're young and, everybody is, playing all sports really, basketball, football, playing a little bit of baseball. But the joy that the game brought my dad early on at an early age that I saw, and he introduced it to me at an early age, really attracted me to the game. So that's kind of how I got going in it.
What was your biggest influence going into college and making that decision as to where to go?
I had a really tight circle and, it was my mom, my dad, and my high school coach. Those were the three people that kind of helped me through the decision-making process. And, for me as a young, a teenager making that decision, it was a lot, because I'm from High Point, North Carolina, kind of a small town, and hadn't really been outside of the state a lot, and so ACC basketball was at the forefront of, athletics in the state at the time, because they didn't have the Charlotte, the Panthers, you didn't have the Hornets, Bobcats, Hornets again, they didn't have the pro sports field. So ACC basketball is what really took precedence. And so, when it came time for me to make that decision, it was, one, which situation presented the best opportunity for me and to accomplish all my goals. I wanted to get a great education from a great university. I wanted to build lifelong relationships. That networking piece was huge. And then from a basketball standpoint, being able to come in and contribute right away and be able to impact the program right away. So those were kind of the things that went into it. And those are the people that kind of helped me make that decision and keep my mind where it needed to be, and not get caught up in the glitz and the glamours and the things that look good but aren't really important.
Okay, so first of all, even now that they have the Panthers and they have the NBA team, Bobcats, Hornets, I think college basketball is still king in North Carolina, especially in the Triangle area. You went to
Yeah.
NC State 1996 to 2000. What were the emotions, the feelings you had when you stepped on the basketball court for the first time in your conference game?
Well, the first time I stepped foot on the court in a conference game, it wasn't a good feeling because I probably had the worst game of my career. We were at Florida State. They were really, really good then. They were their back line was like 7 foot, 6'10", 6'8", and they played a full court 1-3-1 zone, and I just remember dribbling up court. I couldn't see over these guys. And I had two of the worst turnovers I probably had my entire career. So it wasn't a good feeling. It wasn't a good feeling. But after that game, I realized, like, man, I got a lot of work to do. I knew what ACC basketball was all about, and there was nowhere else to go but up from there. So,
what is ACC basketball all about?
It was competitive. Back then it was, when they had 9 teams in the league, and so you played everybody twice. And it was just a really competitive league at that time. And so, you understood that every night you had to bring it. There was going to be no nights off. And it didn't just start in the game. And I think this is for all college freshmen, young guys coming from high school and being introduced into college. Like, a lot of times you're used to being the best player on your team or the best player on the court. And when you get to college, and that's regardless of what conference, what league, when you get there, everybody you're playing against was the best in their school, the best in their league, the best on their team. Heck, some of them was the best in the country at the time. And so you got to be ready to, strap it on and bring it every night. And it's not just the game, it's the practice as well. And you got to learn to prepare yourself for those big moments in games, and during the practice process.
Well, you brought it every night. 103 starts at NC State, which is the second most all time for an NC State player. You clearly were able to play a lot, and you played at a high level. I remember you as a very tenacious point guard, really good handling the backcourt, and defensively, you had a ridiculous amount of steals. You're a pesky player, tough to play against. How would you describe yourself as a player?
I'm competitive. I would just say I'm a competitor, and I try to, I compete in everything I do, and how I attribute that a lot to how I grew up, growing up in an environment where, we played a lot of outdoor basketball in those days, and there were a lot of people outside, and so when you went to the playground, to the park, if you lost, you may not play the rest of the day, or you may have to sit 3 or 4 games. And so I learned at a real early age that, hey, losing will get you sent home really early. And so that kind of is something that stuck with me all the way through my playing career. And, when I got to NC State, I wasn't always the tallest. I knew I wasn't going to be the most athletic. I wasn't going to, a lot of times I may not be the best player out there, but I knew the one thing I could do at a high level, regardless of who I played against, it was compete and, not take plays off. And I really tried to also just be a student of the game. And I studied a lot of film, learned the intricacies of the game, of our offense, that Coach Sendek was trying to implement, and also studied other players, kind of what their tendencies were and what they like to do. And I was just always looking for an advantage that could keep me on the floor, that could keep me being productive and making it tough for coach to pull me out of the game.
What were some of the moments that you remember the most, look back on fondly? I know you said your first start wasn't the best, but what are some of the good memories?
Yeah, I remember that my first ACC game wasn't great. I would say my last regular season ACC game as a freshman kind of like it brought everything to a good not closure because we went to the tournament, but it kind of brought things together for me because I started out at a really good point. I got injured early on, had to work my way back. And then, the last game of the season, we played at Wake Forest against Tim Duncan, his senior night, Tony Rutland. I mean, it was a really big night. And, I was in the rotation, but I wasn't a heavy minute guy in the rotation. And one of our guys got hurt in the second half. And I was called upon to play some heavy minutes. And, I made a big steal and went down and laid it up in a crucial point of the game to help kick it into overtime. And, we ended up beating Tim Duncan on senior night on a controversial shot by CC Harrison. Some say it was a 3, others say it was a 2. He made it. We won the game. I'm calling it a 3. And
that's all that matters.
That's all that matters. That's all that matters. But it was a huge moment for our team because we were able to gain momentum into the ACC tournament. It was a huge moment for me and me feeling like I belong and I'm here. And so we went on to the ACC tournament, which leads into, I guess, another moment that sticks with me is my freshman year when, we went from the play-in game, made it all the way to the championship game versus UNC. And they knocked us off in the championship game. But I set the ACC tournament record for most minutes played and started 4 games, 4 days, and never came out of the game. And that was kind of like, but I attribute that Wake Forest game to getting me to the point where I could gain the trust of my coaches, my teammates for that weekend.
Sure. How about March 10th, 2000?
Man, March 10th, 2000. That was my senior year. Was that that had to be the ACC tournament, right?
Yep.
What was that?
You're playing Virginia.
Oh, yeah. That was a great moment. I think I set the tournament record for steals in a game, I think it was.
You had 9,
and
yes.
I had 9. Is that record still? Does that still hold?
Yeah, it is. It's second most in NC State history for a total in a game ever.
Okay.
Yeah. But for in the conference tournament, yes. It's still
Man, how about that? Yeah. And it's the most steals in an ACC tournament game. Yeah, and it was funny because I just didn't realize that I'd had that many steals, and because it just felt like a couple of them just kind of came to me, and I just happened to be in the right place at the right time and kind of sniffed out the play. But I attribute a lot of it, one, to Coach Sindek and the staff preparing us, getting us ready, and helping us have an understanding of what they're trying to do. And then, like I said before, I would always spend a lot of time just watching extra tape, watching extra film, and learning tendencies of my opponents. And it was a great night. I remember looking at that stat sheet after, like, man, that's a lot of steals. So
yeah. At what point did you think to yourself, man, I want to be a coach? Was it one of those film sessions or you're sitting there thinking that this is something you would want to do for the next few years, the rest of your life?
You know what? It wasn't. And I can remember distinctly, I think we were coming back from a road trip versus Virginia. And John Gross and I, Coach Gross was the restricted earnings coach at the time. He's, went on to be a head coach at Ohio and Illinois, and he's at Akron now. But we were really close when I played. And he mentioned it to me. He said, man, JG, you ought to think about, being a coach when you're all said and done. And I said, Coach, there's no way I'd ever coach guys like me. Like I know I'm hard headed. I know how I am, and I don't have the patience, coach. I could never do it. And so I loved the game. I studied the game, but I never thought I would have the patience to do it. And so I went on and I went over and played a couple years in Europe. I played in France. I played in Austria. And then I came back and I really, I got into athletic administration and I spent 3 years working on my master's and the Lee Fowler, who was AD at NC State at the time, had kind of created a position for me, like an assistant to the AD position. And I kind of bounced around the athletic department, learning different areas and all of that good stuff. And, I was on my way to career in athletic administration, but the game kept calling me. I was started working guys out. Then I became like the 8th grade coach at Cary Academy. And then Coach Powell over there asked me to help out with the varsity. So then I was an assistant. And then I was still kind of, messing around, playing a little bit, still working guys out on the side. Then I had camp. And then I was in it, I was like, man, okay. But it hadn't felt like, man, I want to coach. I want to coach the bug. And then Sidney Lowe got the job at NC State, and he had a position open on staff, and he asked if I would have any interest in it. And I talked to kind of my mentor at the time, who was David Horning, who was like the second in command at NC State in the administrative side. And he was like, hey, we can figure something out where you're more administrative than coaching wise. And so I did the administrative thing, but once I got over there, it was over. That bug just it crept in, and I was addicted to it. And an opportunity at Elon presented itself from a relationship that I formed with Matt Matheny, and I was in it from there, and I haven't looked back. And I'll be honest, it was the best decision that I've made, although it is a tough career. It's tough on your family because it's demanding and very involved. But I've loved every minute of it. Every stop I've been, I've learned something new, and it's been great. And I love giving back to these young guys and guys that, years ago I thought I'd have had no chance of having the patience to coach, and I'm kind of the patient coach. You know what I mean? I'm like the guy that can that can take on the toughest challenges. So, but to say that I dreamt of doing this when I started playing the game, no, I had no plans at all of doing it.
You said you were the patient coach. I asked you about how you describe yourself as a player. Kind of how would you expand on that as a coach? How would you describe yourself in a coaching role?
Yeah, I've grown a lot. I've grown a lot. I've been through many phases. I think when I started out, when I was younger, I thought I was patient, but I didn't have the patience that I feel like I do now. But that all comes with growth. But I'm a high energy guy. I love connecting with players. I love building relationships. To me, that's the funnest part of the job, and the best part of the job is just being able to get to know these young men outside of the court and get to know where they come from, what their other interests are, what they like to do outside of basketball, and just to grow and to build and to share with them my experience. Look, man, I did it this way, and it didn't turn out how I wanted it to. Maybe you try this, maybe you try that. But to answer your question, I would say high energy. I'm big on connections. I'm big on relationships with our guys, and I'm a teacher. I try to do my best to break the game down to its simplest form, and sometimes it may be, coach, that's like that's elementary, but my first coaching job was 8th graders. I coached 8th grade at Cary Academy, and you had to just break it all the way down for those guys. And to my core, that's kind of who I am.
You're known to be a great recruiter. It's something that helped you get your job there. Coach Barnes talked about, how he knows you as that. You know a lot of people in the area that you are in now. What are some of the special players, relationships that you've developed along the way?
I mean, that's tough. I mean, because all of the relationships that you kind of build in throughout your career, um, they all are meaningful. They all hold a special place in your heart, in your mind. And I love it when guys from teams past or guys I've recruited that maybe I didn't get that, we have a great relationship. Like a great example will be Sam Hunt, right? I was coaching at Appalachian State at the time, and Sam played at NC State. He did his grad transfer year there. But I recruited him when I was at Appalachian State and didn't get him. And we're kind of from the same area. I'm High Point, Greensboro, and I played at Greensboro Day, Dudley, all of that stuff. But just to see him and to be able to mentor him as he kind of goes through it, that's a relationship that I cherish. And I'm able to ask him questions and bounce things off him as being that younger coach that's closer to the age of the guys that we're recruiting. But relationships like that are invaluable. They really are. And another relationship I'll say is with my former head coach Herb Sendek. How I got to NC State, I signed under Les Robinson, and Les resigned at the end of the year, and then Herb kind of took over. So he inherited really a point guard who he didn't recruit, most important position on your team. And he kind of inherited me. And, when he got the job, he did a great job of re-recruiting me, and I stayed true to my commitment. And, through those 4 years though, it was demanding, it was demanding, and he was tough, and he was, some of the things I didn't understand. But as I look back on it, after years after I left, after I look back on it, and as I'm a coach, it all makes sense. And to this day, in this profession, like Coach Sendek is a really close friend, and I consider him, a great friend and a mentor. But that's another relationship in the whole grand scheme of things that I kind of that I value. So, and then also like former teammates, and I got some guys that are in the business, in the coaching business, Levi and Al Pinkins and even Julius Hodge and all those guys who we're able to kind of bounce stuff off each other, be it stuff from school, but also in our career as we go along this coaching journey. And so the relationships come from all sides, come from all angles, and it's just, but they're all unique, although some of us may be in the same space now or may not be in that same space that we were in school. They all are unique, and they're all precious, and I appreciate all of them.
You went and coached under Herb Sendek at Santa Clara, Arizona, but you also were with Jason Capel at App State, and then Wojciechowski at Marquette. That's UNC, NC State, and Duke. How the heck did you get on the staff of these other opponents in a rivalry that's as strong as NC State has with those other two teams?
And I tell you what, working for those guys, it wasn't a year that went by that we were talking about the battles we had, because me and Wojo played against each other.
Yeah.
Cape and I played against each other. And so, it would always come up. And so when NC State and Carolina played, or NC State and Duke played, man, I'm praying that we had a good showing so I could come into the office with my chest poked out and talk a little smack. And then, ESPN Classic started running the games too, so the old games come on, and, they showed me and I don't know if Wojo was in the game or not, but an NC State Duke game. And when I was on there, and the players were watching it, and they were, giving me a hard time. But, I would say, although it does look a little weird, I go back to relationships. and Jason Capel and I, we were on the high school team together at Greensboro Day School. He was a eighth grader, but he was like the number one eighth grader in the country, and he played up on varsity. And I was a sophomore there, and we were teammates for a year. So his family and my family got to know each other, and he and I were really good friends, and stayed that even when he left. His dad got new jobs, he left, but we always stayed in touch, and then we played against each other in school. And again, when you're on the court, none of that matters. Like I'm trying to beat him, and he's trying to beat me. And but afterwards and before that, we're still friends, and we're still friends to this day. And Wojo and I, we battled against each other for a couple years in the league, and so we kind of got to know each other there. And then as years went on, I was in the business, he was in the business. We would see each other on the road, and we had mutual friends. Chris Carrawell, who same class as I was at Duke. He and I consider him one of my best friends to this day. And again, that started in college. We got to know each other in college, and so that was kind of my connection to Wojo at the Marquette thing. We see each other on the road. I knew Chris, and that kind of connected us. But yeah, it is strange. It is odd that we can coexist, I guess, is that outside the lines, because when we would play noon hoops up there, it was back to the old days.
It's still very competitive. Now you are in SEC territory at Tennessee for your first upcoming season. What do you feel like is next in 5-10 years for you?
Man, I'm first off, I'm excited to be here. I really am. Being a guy from North Carolina, Tennessee the name has always kind of, you've heard it, and I've had a couple guys that I know come to Tennessee, and they told me how great it was. And then, people went throughout the profession talk about, how great the city is, and just to be here in this great university where they care about basketball, and they care about all of their sports, and everybody's kind of connected and united, is great. And then to top it off with a Hall of Fame caliber head coach and Coach Rick Barnes, a guy who, again, we battled against each other as well when I was a player. He was at Clemson at the time. So, there's another like little strange connection. But I'm thrilled. I'm ecstatic. I think we're gonna have a really, really good team this year, and I'm excited to work with Coach Barnes, his amazing staff, and be a part of this university. And like, what's next? 5 years. It's hard to say. My ultimate goal is to be a head coach. I want to be the leader of my own program someday. I want to be able to take a little piece from all the great coaches that I've had the opportunity to work with, create my own style, create my own brand, and give it a Justin Gainey twist to it. But that is the ultimate goal. But I know to do that, and I've learned through this business from my own experience and from watching others, like the only way you can accomplish your individual goals is with team success. And that kind of goes back to the first part. Like I'm completely locked in on being here and helping Tennessee reach its first Final Four and try to get us a national championship.
Okay, we'll be looking for big things from Tennessee this year then. Outside of the game of basketball, what do you like to do in that small amount of spare time that you have?
Wow, that's a great question. I love just spending time with my family and just being able to kind of kick back and relax with them. I like to cook. I won't say I'm the best, but I can dibble and dabble, and I can do a few things. So I like to get out on the grill and grill. I can work the oven. I can do all of that stuff, but I kind of find it therapeutic to be able to just kind of go in the kitchen and take all of these ingredients to create something that is enjoyable to others, and
Kind of
I'd say my,
sounds like coaching,
yeah,
taking all these players together and make an enjoyable
right.
team for the fans.
Yeah, yeah, no doubt about it. No doubt about
What's
it.
your go-to meal?
My go-to meal, I love salmon. I love salmon. So either some type of grilled salmon, pan seared salmon. I'm new to the air fryer game. I'll throw some
Okay.
salmon in my air fryer, but I would say that's my go-to. My go-to meal right there would be a little salmon, maybe some seasoned rice. Um, and either like some asparagus or a nice salad.
You mentioned your family. I noticed that all of your kids also share the same first initial that you do in
Yeah,
J. However, your wife, she is a C with her
yeah.
first initial. How did you win that battle?
I tell you, I have a great wife. She is amazing. She is amazing. She puts up with all of my stuff. I say we got to move to California. Okay, let's do it. Hey, now we're moving to Arizona in a year. Now we're moving to Milwaukee in and she doesn't bat an eye. She doesn't flinch. All right, let's go. Let's get it done. I know what I got to do. And so and then she also allows me to name all the boys with a J. So that's all her. That's all her. No doubt about it.
Do you have any young basketball players coming up?
So my oldest son, Jordan Gainey, he'll be a freshman at the University of South Carolina Upstate. He's going to play there.
Okay.
So we're excited about that, and it's unique in this year because I've never coached him before. We would work out, but I've never like coached him in a game, and we play each other this year. So USC Upstate comes up to Tennessee and plays us this year. So I'm going to be a wreck that game already. I know it.
Yeah.
But he's a good player. He's a little different than me. Much taller, scores the ball a lot better than I do. But I'm just excited for him and this opportunity he has down at USC Upstate with Coach Dickerson. And I have a 15-year-old son who entering the ninth grade. He loves to play as well. So we'll kind of see where that goes. And then I have a 2-year-old who he's already got a ball in his hand. He watches his brothers, and so he just he mimics everything they do. So I think he already has that basketball bug in him.
All right. What is the best advice that you can give upcoming players if they kind of want to make it to the D1 level? What do they need to work on? Attitude that they need to bring?
The first thing I would tell them is you have to love it. Like if you don't love the game, it's going to be really, really hard for you to make it and achieve your dreams. I don't care how tall you are. I don't care, how good you may be. If you don't love it and you're not willing to sacrifice and work at it every single day and to become the best, then it's going to be really tough for you to achieve your dreams. So the first thing I would tell these young guys is, and the parents of these guys, they have to fall in love with it. And there's nothing as a parent that you can do in that process. It solely has to come from them. They have to fall in love with the game, and then next fall in love with the process, because it's tough, and I didn't really understand how hard it was to be a Division I athlete until I went through it with my son, my oldest son, Jordan. And he's a guy that, he's 6'4", he can really shoot it. He's a really good athlete. And I couldn't figure out why he didn't have any D1 offers. I'm thinking like, man, he's so much better than me. And, he has a lot of, just kind of God-given ability. And I could not figure it out. And it hit me as just like, everybody doesn't play D1 just because I'm around it all the time, and that's all I'm watching when I go, when I lock in on recruiting. is D1 guys. And, you know, I played at that level. So I've been around it so long, I kind of didn't understand what it took and how hard that process is. And so if you don't love it, and that's why I commend him, is because like there was a lot of times he could have just shut it down and quit, but he didn't. He just kept pursuing it. He found that love. And I probably loved it for him more when he was younger than he did. And now to see him at this stage he's at now, where, you know, it's every thought he has it evolves around that. It brings me joy. And so to answer your question, I would say you got to fall in love with it, fall in love with the game, fall in love with the process. It's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take time. But you got to accept that, and you can't give up, and you got to keep pushing. And that's why if you love it, you'll keep going. You'll keep going through it. And you know, from there, once you get that the love for it, everything else kind of takes care of itself, because if you love it, you'll be willing to make that adjustment to your sleep schedule, to eat better, because you know you're doing it for a bigger cause and a bigger reason, and you have a purpose.
I really appreciate the time that you spent talking to me. I've enjoyed learning a little bit more about your career, what you've been doing since you've been at NC State, and definitely look forward to that game. I got to go look it up, whatever the date is, Tennessee versus UFC Upstate. I will definitely be watching.
Well, Erin, thank you for having me. And when I got the call, I was so excited about it. You know, I appreciate you including me in it. And I have that date circled. That'll be the day that I'll be a wreck. So, you know, call me that day and kind of comfort me a little bit. Make sure I'm all right.
Thanks for listening. Make sure you subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so you don't ever miss an episode of ACC Stars. Where are they now?